Joining us tonight is the co-founder of Women in Motorsports North America and CEO and team principal of Paretta Autosport, Beth Paretta. Beth, welcome in to Grid tonight. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. We're so glad to have you. And Beth, we know you and everyone at Women at Motorsports North America are working hard and are excited about the third annual Women with Drive Summit. So for who are watching right now, being introduced to you, Women in Motorsports North America, and Women with Drive, what are you as a co-founder, the organization, and the summit's missions and goals?
So, Women in Motorsport North America is a professional organization to support the entire industry, the entire motorsport industry. The idea was born really when I started my race team. I had an idea for trying to support the broader mission of what we're trying to do beyond my race team. And so in 2021, in talking to Lynn St. James, we kind of hatched the plan to work together and make sure that we could thoughtfully connect all of the women in racing, either the women that are already there, and then ideally by building a strong network, it then became would then become the place where women who are interested in joining the industry could go to for information, mentorship, job listings, additional training, sort of mid-career training. So through several discussions, we decided to reach out to a bunch of friends within the industry, representing all different series, different roles within motorsport, and we then created Women in Motorsport North America. The key about it, as I say, is it's meant to be cross-disciplinary. So it's across all forms of racing, whether it's stock car, open wheel, drag racing, land speed records, off-road, open wheel, and the idea that it's for all jobs within the paddock. So if it is a driver, a mechanic, an engineer, somebody that's running a series, somebody that's in marketing, PR, medical personnel that are specific to motorsport, people that do timing and scoring. So the suppliers, I mean, we know that this is such a big industry, but we know it if we work inside of it. But it was the idea of let's make sure that people on the outside know all that it takes to make something like the race that you watch on Sunday. What puts that on? What makes that happen? Because we need the best and brightest minds to be part of it, and the best candidates to work in this business are people that already are fans and love it, because obviously it's a very difficult way to make a living, but it can be very rewarding. It can be a way that you can have a lifelong career. And so we wanted to let more people know what was possible for them, and maybe they could find a place for themselves within our industry. And so
That's
that gets us to
amazing.
the summit that you mentioned, the Women with
Mhm.
Drive Summit. So
Mhm.
this is our third annual. It's grown by leaps and bounds. So I will say we had the idea of Women in Motorsport North America, but as soon as we then assembled this group of about 40 professionals within the business, men and women, because we wanted to have, different viewpoints, different experiences, really just thought leaders to kind of figure out how can we do this and what's the best way to kind of kick it off. And from that, we have a bunch of different ideas, grassroots ideas, right? So right now we're still at that macro level, but then it will then go to the micro of replicating some of the things we do on the national level in regional, sort of smaller versions on the regional level, to be able to kind of meet new candidates to the industry where they are and support the existing members where they are. But this Women with Drive Summit is going to be in Phoenix on November 7th and 8th. And again, it's our third annual. Last year was in Charlotte. The first year was in Nashville. And so we specifically have been moving the location so that we kind of kind of move around the country. That way, we know that travel isn't always easy for everybody. So hopefully, you don't necessarily have to come every year, but if it's closer to you, then maybe it might be easier for you to fit it into your calendar. But it's a 2-day, effectively seminar. We've got keynote speakers, panel discussions, and then we'll have this year for the first time, we're going to have breakout rooms, breakout discussions for more specific, narrower focused conversations. So for instance, people that work in public relations can attend a seminar that's specifically focused on public relations. Engineering can talk to people that are, find like-minded people that are studying engineering as well. And having breakout times so that we can also mix and mingle. You can build your network and ideally kind of get to know women from across the country. So again, it's November 7th and 8th, but I will say, we just found out today it is sold out. So for those that were still planning on coming in person, it is sold out, which is great for us, but don't despair. Because of a generous sponsorship from Gamebridge, we are going to be streaming a lot of the content live. So you can watch it on our social channels for those of you that are far away or aren't able to make the trip this year. And it'll give you a taste of what goes on. And then hopefully you can plan to attend next year.
Well, congratulations on the sellout. That's amazing. That's well
400,
deserved
it's over 400
as
people. So
well.
that's a big deal, right? You know, that's a big room.
Awesome.
Really, really
Yeah.
excited. But you know what it tells you? It tells you that the need was there. This, you know, like I say, it was an idea for Lynn and I, Lynn St. James and I in 2021, and it's taken off like a rocket. But I think that tells you that, you know, it was needed.
For sure. And we had a comment in the chat room from Joe saying, "Welcome to the show, Beth."
Thank
And
you, Joe.
I just wanted to say on a personal, I want to say on a personal note for me that I'm doing something similar, like trying to expand LGBTQ plus people in motorsport. And I love that what you
Yes.
do for women. I'm trying to do the same for LGBTQ plus people. So I really like look up to you and everything. And I just wanted to say
I
that.
appreciate it. Anything that we can do to help,
Yeah,
like take the pages out of our playbook, you know, some of the events that we do, by all means, don't reinvent the wheel. If there's any way that we can help you to kind of figure out some structure
for
or
sure.
some, you know, some events, please let us help.
Thank you so much. And we have a comment here. A Day in the Life says they were at the 2021 Indy 500, and when they saw your team qualify in,
Yay!
it was a wonderful story from that year. I totally agree. And
Thank you for
then
saying that.
we have
I
another
will say that
comment. Yeah.
anyone who's been in the Indy 500 will tell you that the qualifying is kind of like winning in its own way.
And we had another comment from Adam saying, "Ask Beth, would you like to see a female Formula One sometime, full time?"
Of course, of course. I don't think, you know, there's been quotes over the years of why, and I mean, I have my own. It's opportunity. It's not a lack of talent or a lack of physical ability. It's just a reduced amount of opportunity for decades, right? So, although you're seeing a lot of activity now around it, that will pay dividends even a decade from now. And then in time it'll become a non-issue, which is ideal. You know, it's funny, we hear about things, if you think of historically, you hear this thing called Title IX in the United States, and that was when women were not allowed to play college sports. And so now it feels so funny and so foreign to think of that. And it was, you know, before my lifetime as well. So I've always known women to be able to play college sports, let alone professional sports and professional leagues.
Yeah.
But obviously, it was a lot of women that worked hard to get that door to be open. And then once you kick it open, if it could stay open, that's great. So although you're hearing a lot of chatter right now, you know, ideally, there's women that are kind of now like climbing up that ladder. And so 5 years time, 10 years time, it's going to be a non-issue, and you're going to hopefully just see talented people, you know, fighting wheel to wheel.
100%. And
Beth,
I'll
as you mentioned,
toss it over to Matt for our next
sorry.
question here.
Yeah, thank you. As you mentioned, yourself and Lynn St. James have got some history together with the summit, and you've also got some big history together at IMS and the Indy 500. We saw Catherine Legg run the race this year with Rahel Letterman Lanigan, and of course the only previous female before that was yourself with Simona De Silvestro in 2021, as the Day in the Life mentioned with his comment. Is it a bit surprising that we're only seeing the odd female racer pop up here and there, or with obviously there's a lot of female competitive rides going globally, mostly in sports car racing, has to be said. But what do you think about the Indy 500 and the sort of female decline, I guess, over the last few years, when the odd one popping up here and there?
Yeah, it's surprising considering there was a year there that I think there were like 6 women on the grid, which was such a huge story at the time, rightfully. I think the reason you're seeing a lot going into sports cars, there's just a lot of drives there, right? So, in fact, I'm glad that we're seeing that too, because I think when you see when there was a series like the W Series when that launched, and it was that lofty goal, like, oh, we're, you know, we want to get a woman in F1. Although that's a great ambition, I always I'm always concerned when people think that that's the only measure of success, because obviously there's a finite amount of F1 drives. Case in point, you've got teams that are trying to get into F1, and we'll have 2 more seats available, but there aren't really a lot of opportunities, because think about it, any given season, how many open seats are there? 2, 3? It's not like the whole grid changes over from year to year. So I think you're seeing a lot of proliferation in sports car just because that's where the opportunities are. There you have growing, expanding grids, plus, each of those cars requires 2 to 3, 4 drivers per car. So there's just more opportunity. We should have more women in IndyCar. It is physically demanding. In fact, the men who are in it right now will tell you that it's at such a competitive level that their fitness is far more important than it might have even been 10 years ago. You're really seeing a discrepancy because the window of competition is so small. But you're seeing more women on the stock car side too. Women have been successful in drag racing. We've got Erica Enders, who's just won, and she's now the winningest woman in motorsport history, well deserved. So it's interesting that there's been these pockets where women have been really able to showcase talent. I think you're going to start to see more women getting into IndyCar, maybe also because of all this effort of like the F1 Academy, the W Series, and that okay, if they don't have that opportunity at F1, maybe they can come over to IndyCar, because it's great racing. I mean, I would argue that on a given weekend, it might be better racing than what you're watching in F1 right now, just because the field is tighter.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. We've got obviously Jamie Chadwick in Indy Next this year, and the Iron Dames project in sports cars is doing
Absolutely.
great things. So yeah, really looking good. Another comment from Adam. Good evening to you, Adam. Been a huge fan of women in motorsports going back to Shauna Robinson, Laurie Johns, and Shirley Maldoni in the NHRA. Yeah, there's some big names from the past that are still in the game to some degree, aren't
You're
they?
going to see there's a new documentary being made about Shirley Maldoni that I think might be out next year. So that'll be a fun one to watch.
Yeah, I did hear that was on the cards. Back to the summit. You mentioned that Gamebridge have come on board. They're going to be sponsoring the sponsorship in motorsport portion of it, presented by Gamebridge.
They're going to stream it.
Group panel discussion titled "Global Impact of Women in Motorsport," presented by IMSA. How important do you think it is for drivers to be good on track and utilize their marketability tools off it?
I think the reality is, racing is so competitive, and I say this as respectfully as I can. We expect you to be good behind the wheel, right? So what is like, that's kind of the like the price of admission. You have to be good behind the wheel. You have to be fast. The nice thing is it's also measurable, right? But even if you're within, striking distance, what is going to set you apart? What's going to make you marketable? This is a sport. Everybody knows, any racing fan knows that we completely run on sponsorship. The great thing, though, is we are able to tell sponsors, and it is true that racing fans are very supportive of sponsors, authentically so, because they know that that's what kind of makes our world go round. So if you see, Gainbridge on the side of the car, you're going to research and say, what do they do? Is it something that I can consume? In fact, last year, I remember when IndyCar switched from Speedway fuel to Shell and announced the Shell as fuel supplier, IndyCar fans were like, "Oh, look at me filling up with Shell," and like you literally have that. Those are those decision points that racing fans genuinely make. If you're at an intersection and you see gas station 1 and a Shell station, if you're a huge IndyCar fan, you're actually going to go to that Shell station. And I'm sure people in the audience might say, like, "Yeah, I kind of do that," but that's measurable. And so, having a marketable personality, there's a few drivers over the years that I've managed behind the scenes, and there's one in particular that I have worked with who is absolutely fantastic. There's no doubt that he sells cars. And it's funny to me when sometimes the people at the car companies don't value that as much as they could, because like you can have people that are even Steven, and sometimes even somebody that's like a half second, not half second, a hundredth slower. You can work on getting faster. You can't work on getting more. I mean, you can't really work on getting more personable or being better with, you could work, just having that natural charisma does actually matter. And I mean, ultimately too, especially when you look at certain sports like sports car and stuff, where you have to collaborate with your team, personality matters. I mean, I've been lucky enough to build a few teams and be part of teams as they're building. And when you're assembling a group of people, if you can pick somebody that's great to be around and is great energy that can help lift the team up, that is worth its weight in gold. So I would say don't only think that it's the race against the, it's not just timing and scoring. You have to be the full package, because anybody can beat you on any given day. So show me the 360-degree version of you, and that's how you're gonna get hired.
To follow up on that quickly, I mentioned there before, your driver from a couple of years ago, Simona De Silvestro, she, from the outside, she seems great with the fans, she's great with the media. What was your, obviously, impression with working with her on a day-to-day basis in that run at the 500 last year?
So I will say that Simona is such a talent that when I was putting the deal together and approached Roger Penske, his first question was, who do you want to drive? And I said, Simona De Silvestro. And without any hesitation, he's like, oh my God, she's great. He's like, she beat us in the rain at Bathurst. And he's remembering his V8 supercar team. And because Roger has that brain, right, that he'll just remember, he can remember an exact race, an exact lap, and something that happened. He obviously remembered her from her full-time stint in IndyCar. But it was specifically that, about the level of her talent. I couldn't have done that deal with Roger with any other driver. I will absolutely, I'll say that out loud now. And I didn't know her. I had actually never met her before. So I was just going based on what I knew, based on, her on paper and everything I've seen from afar. In fact, I wanted to hire her years ago, but she was otherwise committed to another project. So she was unavailable. So I knew it was futile to even give her a call at that time. So, I literally met her I called her, I cold called her, I got her phone number and cold called her and said, hey, what do you think about coming back to IndyCar and maybe doing the Indy 500? And as you can imagine, I actually sent her an email, and as you can imagine, like pretty soon after, like, yes, let's talk. So, because that's always on every driver's, bucket list. And she absolutely adores IndyCar. But I will say, then I had the good fortune to get to know her and get to know her dad and friends and stuff. And she's just a delight. And she's now become a really good friend. And that is just a bonus, because she's awesome. And she's really fun to hang out with. What's fantastic is, she can get out of the car going 230 miles an hour at the speedway, and then, take the helmet off, and we can chat and just kind of figure out what we're going to do for dinner, and, laugh about something. And she's just exceedingly normal, which might make her also annoying, that she can be so talented and yet also very, very normal.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Amber, good evening to you. Says that's a cool story about Roger. And yeah, I got the feeling that Roger couldn't pick a result out of his head about anything. And of course, Simona was at Bathurst last couple of weeks ago again. Down there in Australia. Matthew,
I know it was a big balance of performance issue. I was watching, we were texting a little bit, so I was watching it from afar. I know it was a bit of a balance.
It's been a big story in that championship all season between Ford and Chevrolet. Good evening to Matthew, who says, so many in the industry has spent years and decades to get women into IndyCar. What would a female winner of the 500 do for the next generation of women race car drivers? Of course, we were very close with Danica Patrick in the mid 2000s, but what do you think that would be? That would be liftoff for everything, wouldn't it?
It really would. And I mean, it's easy to say in retrospect, but I think a few of us thought it in real time. We would have loved if she would have stayed in IndyCar instead of going to NASCAR. I understand why she did it. I have dear friends that did the exact same thing, and actually came back to IndyCar. I would have loved to have seen what she could have accomplished in IndyCar had she stayed, because the one thing that I think, people will ask, well, will there ever be a woman champion or a woman Indy 500? So what I'm working towards, and what other people are as well, is it's about, and whether it's Indy 500, IndyCar, F1, right? It's all the same challenge and really the same solution. It's just getting to that point of allowing, putting the solution together. It's consistency. You need to, it's not, before I mentioned it's about giving opportunity. Well, it's about then giving a consistent opportunity, because we still suffer from, a woman's in the car and, she goes off the track, and there's that moment where people are like, oh, does she even deserve the ride? Meanwhile, there's a guy that could go off the track 10 times in 5 races. And you're like, oh, he's just finding the limit. And we still kind of treat men and women, not all of us, but there's still part of the fan base and some team owners that haven't really had that switch yet. So when you start to see women women need to then get that consistent opportunity to then achieve those positive results on track. When you start to see more women achieving positive results on track, it then, like you're seeing us as a monolithic group now that we're all the same. Well, if they start winning, will you also see us as all the same? Probably not. But the more wins or successes or podiums that you see, again, baby steps, let's climb that ladder. The more you see, the better it will get. We've already seen in a short amount of time how many more women are in the paddock in so many different roles as engineers and mechanics, and we're normalizing it, right? Because honestly, in theory, this should be the best meritocracy. It's like, okay, can you change the tire faster? Can you figure out a race strategy better than that person? I don't care what you look like. Are you good? Then we'll hire you. And if you can get results, you're going to keep your job. And so what's nice is it's giving that opportunity. Now you're seeing that consistent opportunity where you're now going to start to see these women excelling. But same thing, if you look at an IndyCar example, you look at somebody like Scott Dixon, who has so many championships. Not to take away from his talent, but he's been with his team for 20 years. There's something that's fantastic about that, where you almost have like nonverbal communication with your engineers because you've been partnered with them for so long. You think about like when you start a new job, there's those few months of just getting to know how each other works and how each other communicates. So when you see these drivers kind of hopscotching around, that you might win a race, accidentally win a race, but you're not going to win a championship. It's that consistency that breeds that opportunity for excellence, and that's what we need to start to give to women. And then you're going to see women winning. And will it be life-changing? Yeah, because then it kind of quells everything. Like, okay, now what? And then then we can get back to like just the matter at hand at like, all right, who's good?
Yeah, I don't disagree. We see it in NHRA, don't we, where the playing field is pretty level and the women over there do great things. Day in life again. I agree with Beth. I remember when I first heard Danica was leaving for NASCAR, I think we were all a bit not puzzled, but slightly a bit about that one. Ben, good evening to you. Patrick led laps and finished fourth in 05 and then third in 09. I don't think it's a stretch to say she could have won the 500 if she stayed more to your point, Beth, than before.
That was
with how
Andretti
strong
powerhouse
was
time
at the time.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
And now we'll move on to our next question here for you, Beth. So, how valuable is it to have notable women leaders in motorsport, such as Kelly Earnhardt Miller, Kristen Labonte, Lisa France Kennedy, among many others, participate in or support the summit, and allow people to hear their stories and meet people attending and to build connections?
I think what's great is when you see the people that are in the room, including Steve Phelps. We're naming the women. There's some pretty powerful men that are very kindly joining us as well and lending their stories. But I think what's fantastic, so women definitely, women's stories resonate with women just on a different level. And it's something that we do to ourselves where we just kind of, we always say, if you can see it, you can be it. And there's something very real about that. In fact, when I did some digging early on, I learned that women do that. So the reality is we can't fix that behavior in ourselves to get us to stop. Just like, men have kind of always seen themselves. You've always been an astronaut, right? So it took for women to see a woman astronaut to be like, oh, I can do that too. But since we're not going to fix that little thought process that goes on in our head, the solution is, well, let's show more examples. And let's make these examples visible. Like, somebody like Lisa France Kennedy, part of the France family, has been toiling away running, NASCAR and that entire organization behind the scenes. But if we have you actually hear her story, hear what she deals with day in and day out, it starts to become a little bit more relatable. And I think that's really what's been the takeaway for a lot of these keynotes and panel discussions is you start to realize that everybody kind of started their journey, maybe not Lisa France Kennedy, because she was born into a family that is just, sort of a pillar of our industry. But for the most part, her challenges are real. But for the most part, our stories kind of, we can find commonality. And I think that's comforting, especially when people are just embarking on their career. And so to be able to kind of sit in a room and then after the session, be able to kind of go up and ask questions directly, I think is rewarding and makes you, maybe feel less alone. I think that's the big takeaway with a lot of the events that we've done, because we, of course, encourage all of our attendees to kind of exchange contact info, connect on LinkedIn. And even though they might be, across the country, they start to feel like, they've got a buddy. And that's always good when you're in any career.
Absolutely. And now we have one more question for you. Many people are wondering about 2024 and possible plans for your team, Paretta Autosport. So, for tour, are there any updates on what's going on for next year?
I have no comment. I wish I did, but I have no comment.
We tried.
I know. And it's funny, and I understand the interest, and I'm so grateful that there's interest. But don't believe everything you read is all I'll say.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Put that out there.
Yeah, it's weird to me. And I mean, that's been going on for years, so I just find it more entertaining than anything else. So,
For sure.
yep.
Well, thank you so much, Beth. I really appreciate you doing this for us. And a reminder to all of our viewers, the summit will be held at Phoenix Raceway on November 7th and 8th. It's streamed, as Beth said, courtesy of Gamebridge. And our very own Amanda Kaufman will be attending the summit. So hope she has a great time. And the links to both Women with Drive and Women in Motorsports North America will be in our YouTube description. Beth, thanks so much for your time, for joining us tonight on Grid Tonight.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Beth.